What's going on, guys? It's Jono, and today we're going to be talking about make.com. This is going to be a crash course for beginners on how they can pick up make.com very, very quickly and how they can leverage make.com to either automate like 95% of their business, or they can use it to sell workflows online on places like Upwork for thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. So if that sounds appealing to you, let's dive into it right now. In front of me, I have make.com, right? So simply put, it just automates thousands or hundreds of thousands of processes for your business, right? And how it does that is by connecting in all of these applications that you already freaking use, like Airtable or OpenAI or HubSpot or Google Sheets or Gmail or Google Drive or whatever, right? The list goes on and on and on. And instead of rambling on hypotheticals on what you could build, I actually want to show you guys some of the examples that I use that has been absolutely game-changing for my business. And we will be building out all of these systems later in different modules. So if it helped me out, I'm sure it will also help you out. Let's take a look at these applications right now. So one of the first ones that's just saved me so much time is that we automate pretty much all of our recruitment. Now, if you see here on the sidebar, we have like 4,000 different people applying for our company. And this has happened all within like maybe a month and a week, right? So it's obviously overwhelming, but we've automated the whole process. So we automatically generate these applicants. They come into this Google spreadsheet. They are asked to have onboarding questions. Once they complete those onboarding questions, then we screen them really quickly. If we approve them, then they'll go into a test. If they get approved for the test, they'll go to interviews, right? So all of this happens in a click of a button, saves us probably 20, 30 minutes every single person by not having to send the emails, not having to send the documents or the contracts or whatever. Another example is we send our contracts to clients using PandaDoc, and there's about 150 custom variables, right? So this is not only a contract, but it's also an invoice and it's also a proposal all merged into one. Using make.com, we automatically generate this. We add in the client's name and information about the company, and it goes on and on and on. You can see all the custom variables, whether we're doing upsells or cross sells, or entering all the information. And we also have line items breaking down everything. We include discounts in here and taxes and all of that kind of stuff. And this just happens in literally one click of a button. Like if our sales team were to do this, it'd be at least 30 minutes every single time. So we save about 8 hours as a team every single day just with this one workflow alone, thanks to make.com. Another workflow that we have sets up essentially project management systems in ClickUp. So as soon as, in this case, a new lead comes in, we have a scheduled call amount of 7 calls to call that person over at the course of a month. And this just automatically comes into ClickUp using make.com. Our sales team goes through and they start calling at a specific cadence. We also have this for every other department in our business as well. So this is super beneficial, and this helps not only save money, but also make sure we're calling the right people the right amount of times and all that kind of stuff. Another thing that make.com does is it helps us with analytics, right? So in real time, we collect and gather analytics and display that visually in Data Studio like this. So we can see who the rep is, how many leads they're claiming, how many quotes they're sending out, how many contracts they've signed, deposits paid, what their conversion rates are, revenue, all of that kind of stuff. And we can map it out in beautiful graphs. Another thing that make.com does is it allows us to generate thousands of blog posts using artificial intelligence. In this particular workflow, the AI is literally generating the titles and then the outlines and then creating the blog posts and then also proofreading it, making sure it corrects for grammar, punctuation, spelling, all that kind of stuff, optimizing it for SEO, and then publishing it to WordPress without us having to do anything. Here's just an example of what a blog post looks like. In another workflow, we have we're scraping literally tens of thousands of different businesses online, and without even finding these businesses, without even doing research or looking at the website, we scrape the websites and we create customized proposals for those individual businesses as a lead generation magnet so that they will hopefully contact us and maybe work with us on future service offerings. This is kind of what that proposal looks like. This is just automatically generated and it's customized to every single business, and you can run this tens of thousands of times. Now, those are just some workflows that I built, and we're going to be building all of these at a later point in time in separate videos. But today, what we're going to be focusing on is the basics of make.com, and specifically building out this very simple workflow here, which is 3 steps. And what it is it's all about capturing new leads. Now, why this is so important is because if you call a new lead within literally 60 seconds, and don't take my word for it, this is all documented online through studies, you will increase your conversion rate by 391% or 4 times. So without doing any extra work, if you just call in 60 seconds, you'll make 4 times the amount of money. So with that being said, one of the best workflows to build out is probably just automating the new lead system, right? So that's what we're going to be building out for your business today. Before we dive in, guys, please make sure to subscribe to this channel down below and hit the thumbs up button and turn on the notifications as well. Not only does it really help me, but I'm also going to be releasing videos just like this one almost every single day. And the reason I'm doing this is because in my personal business, right, before I automated everything, I was working like 14 hours a day, maybe 7 days a week, but at least 6 days a week. And just with these systems, right, and obviously a lot more, but with basic systems like this, I was able to bring that time down to 30 minutes a day. And I know that if I can do that for my business, then I'm sure you can as well for yours. And my hope is that by sharing this with you guys, you implement it and you can really have the same game-changing effects that I had in my business. And the best part is that for all of these workflows, you don't even have to build them out. You can come in here and you can click this more button here, and you can literally upload or import a blueprint that I have in the description down below so that you can start using it pretty much immediately. Okay, so let's get started. So using make.com, what we're going to do is we're going to sign up for a free account. Okay. And we'll just go ahead and enter in the basic information here. And once we're good to go, we can sign up for free. Okay, sweet. So it has asked us to verify our email. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this verification link here and paste it back in, and we're good to go. Okay, sweet. So we'll quickly log in here, and the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to ask us just a bunch of random questions for the analytics team. So I'm just going to go ahead and answer these as quickly as possible and move on to the next step here. Okay, perfect. So we have successfully logged in to the dashboard. Now, the first thing that I want to mention with this dashboard in make.com is that the majority of this stuff is going to be useless and you're not going to use it whatsoever. I know that's probably not what you were expecting to hear at this point in the video, but it's true. Just if we take a high-level overview of everything on the side here, you will spend 90% of your time in this scenarios tab here, right? And then you'll spend like 1% of your time in connections and webhooks, and that's essentially it. We will go over everything, but I just want to be real with you guys and not have you waste your time trying to learn things that you're ultimately not going to need to learn. So let's dive into it. I'm actually going to go back into my main account here just so you guys can kind of take a look and see what some of these features look like. So in the organizations tab, you're going to have your current plan listed here. You'll be able to see how much you're paying, how many operations you have, how many are unused for the month, and the billing interval. You can of course upgrade your plan at any point in time. This is pretty important here, the buy extra operations, guys, because what will happen occasionally is you'll be building make.com scenarios and you're going to improve your skills and get better, and ultimately you're going to hit this rate limit, right? Where you might exceed your operations per month. You might go past 150,000. It's going to shut off. And if it shuts off, then nothing's going to work and you're probably going to freak out and be wondering what the hell is going on. So in that case, instead of having to upgrade your account every single time to the next plan, which could be substantially more money, you could just buy extra operations for that month in batches of, I think, 1,000 extra operations. So this is just like a little top me up at the end of every single month if you just need like an extra 1,000 or 2. Perfect. Now below you have all of your active scenarios that you can see running right now. This, I swear, I feel like they just put this in there because they're like, man, I don't know what to put in this homepage. We're running out of ideas. Let's just put exactly what is already in the scenarios tab in the organizations tab. And that's, I swear, what they did, but I could be wrong there. You can kind of see all of your scenarios here as well. So this is kind of useless. You're not going to be looking at your scenarios likely in the organizations tab. Okay, perfect. So that covers the basics of it here. And then you also have teams, right? So you can actually be a part of multiple teams in make.com. So if you have different clients that you're working with or whatever, you can have a new team here, or that you can be invited into their team and see their accounts and swap back and forth. In users, you can add additional people into your account so that they have access to your make.com account, and they can modify, change, or whatever. And then there's subscriptions as well. So you can kind of see the subscription that you're on, right? Now, for most people getting started here, I'd probably just go ahead and choose the free account, right? Just because obviously it's free and you can test out the software. But once you get used to the software, I would definitely recommend going up to the core plan and just sticking with maybe like, I don't know, the basic. You can just go with like 10,000 operations a month. This is $10.59. Now, the cool thing is like, yes, you have to spend money on this, but ultimately speaking, this is like the equivalent of replacing a full-time employee, right? I don't even think a full-time employee given 160 hours in a given month would be able to do as many tasks as this core plan would be able to do for $10.59. I don't think somebody would be able to do 10,000 tasks, but of course I could be wrong, right? So that's pretty much what you need to know for your subscription. Payments are just, you know, past payments that you've had. Installed apps, you're probably not going to use this. You're probably not going to use variables, but variables you can set like a custom variable at an account level, which is cool and all, but like realistically, this isn't going to be super beneficial. I've never used this before. So in case you want to reference like something like you know, zone domain, and it's a text type of data, right? It could be a number or text or whatever. And then, you know, you can pull in this variable, but this is very rare and it's just fluff and you're probably not going to need to know that. And then scenario properties, I've also never used this. So I'm actually going to skip over that. Teams, once again, we kind of just went through this, right? You have your team, you have users in the account, you have notifications. So you can choose your email notifications with make.com. If you want to turn them off, you can, but honestly, I recommend keeping them on, because if things break in make.com, you're probably going to want to know about it pretty fast. You're probably going to want to change it, right? So I would definitely keep errors in scenario running and scenario deactivation as well, right? Warnings, I tend to turn them off just because, you know, depending on the scenario, warnings can happen quite a bit, especially if you're running that scenario all the time. So yeah, it's up to your discretion. I just personally turn them off. And then variables, once again, you're not going to be really using this. So bit redundant with team here. In the scenarios, this is the meat and potatoes of make.com, right? So you have all your scenarios here, and then you can actually just create your own folders, right? So these are all folders I created. You can hit this plus button and add a name here, right? So pretty cool. What I like to do personally when it comes to folders is I just like to create folders around the lifecycle stage of a particular customer in my business. So for example, well, the first step is new lead, and then after that, you know, it's the sales call, and then after that, it might be appointments, or and then contract signed and paid. The reason I like doing that is because typically those are the milestones where you'll have automation tied around. So it's just nice and convenient to build folders around that and then find those automations at a later point in time when you inevitably forget the name of those automations. So that's pretty much the folder section. And then you can see here all of your automations, active scenarios, inactive, and concept. I've never used concept before, but I would imagine this is just like, you know, you're kind of building something out, but it hasn't been published yet. So personally, I just think it's fluff. If you want a concept, you can just have an inactive scenario where you turn it off so it's not running. Now, a couple things to keep in mind here. I do have 100 active scenarios. You can see that some of these workflows, like I use the same modules over and over and over again. And we'll kind of get into this a bit later, but you can see this main one here is a webhook, right? And webhooks are essentially how you feed information into make.com. So where you're receiving information from using make.com, and then you have like certain things that you want to do within it. But the reason I use a webhook here is just because in the CRM I use, which is Go High Level, they don't have a native, or maybe they do, but I just use webhooks because it's easy, right? So there's going to be a lot of different modules that you will use over and over and over again, but some of the more common ones will be webhooks and HTTP modules and things like these tools or whatever. And we'll get into that at a later point in time. But there's tons of different modules here. You can see the lightning here bolt. That means that something went wrong and there's an error with it. You can turn on and off the workflows as you wish here, and then you can move them to a specific folder, clone them or delete them. I clone workflows all the time. It helps me save a ton of time when I'm trying to create workflows in make.com. Okay, templates. Once you see it one time, you can pretty much forget that this ever existed for the rest of your life and never come back. It's going to be like that attic space that nobody's gone into in 20 years with like cobwebs, everywhere. The reason why is because once you come into make.com, sure, this is kind of cool. It'll give you a couple ideas, but once you actually, get it, you're not gonna be using these anymore. It's like a two-step automation. This isn't gonna save you any time. It might even make you more confused than you were to begin with. So its intended use is just to give you practical use cases of how you can use make.com. But in reality, I've personally never used a template in the 5 years I've been automating, and I'm definitely not going to start now. So I don't think there's a lot of practical use cases for templates, but that's just my opinion. With connections, this is where all of the connections are to different software applications that you're using. So if we kind of come back in here to make.com, you can connect anything, right? Airtable, ChatGPT, HubSpot, Webflow, Pipedrive, all these things, right? You're inevitably gonna connect them in. And when you do, you have to authenticate yourself, right? So you have to prove to, for example, HubSpot, hey, this is me trying to log in to give make.com access so they can automate things on my behalf in HubSpot, right? So when you go ahead and do that, you connect an account, you'll be able to see it here. So I've connected like Appify and Slack and Google Drive and ClickUp and PandaDoc and Twilio and all of these other applications, right? So anytime you add an account, it's going to be listed here. And essentially you can verify that an account is working by clicking this verify step here. And once you get the green check mark, then it means you're good to go. If you wish to reauthorize an account, let's say that connection broke down. And the thing is sometimes these connections are only valid, right, for a certain amount of time. So maybe you can only use that connection for like 6 months, and after 6 months, your connection expires, and then at that point in time, it will break and make.com will no longer be able to use it. So you'll frantically probably freak out if you were like me the first couple of times it happened, and then you'll have to come back into this page and you'll have to figure out how to authenticate it. And how you do that is you just hit this reauthorization step here. It's going to bring you to a page, and it's just going to ask you to, give permission to make.com to use, in this case, Dropbox. And that's how you reauthorize a connection. And you can also delete that connection too, to say, hey, make.com, you no longer get access to this account on my behalf. Okay, sweet. So that's connections. It's slightly useful to know, but once again, you're not going to be spending too much time here. Webhooks. So we talked about this, maybe like what seemed to be 2 minutes ago, but may have been like fully 10 minutes ago. I don't know. But you have all of these webhooks. Now, webhooks are going to be one of the most powerful things that you can use in make.com. And the reason is simple, because make.com has all of these integrations built in natively, right? Like you can go in and you can connect Airtable. You can go in and you can connect ChatGPT or HubSpot or Webflow or Pipedrive or whatever, right? There's probably thousands. There might even, I don't think there's 10,000 yet, but there's thousands, right? But the thing is there's also an equal or greater amount of web applications that don't have a native integration into make.com, right? So they don't have something like this that you can click on. You can be like, okay, it's done. It's, the connection's there, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't integrate into all these other web applications, right? Simply put, you just have to do it a different way. So most of the time, all of these applications, if they don't have an integration, they'll be able to allow you to send information via what is known as a webhook. And a webhook is just sending information from one application to the next, right? So you send information from a form submission into make.com, right? So if we kind of go back here, right? Think about a webhook as just somewhere that you're receiving data from. So you receive data from like a webhook module, and then it will send it, in this case, like from a form into make.com. And then once you receive it, then you can use that information to start the rest of the workflow. And we'll kind of go over that at a later point in time, but you will be using webhooks all the time in make.com. And when you do use those webhooks, every single one of them is going to be listed here. You can edit the webhook. You can go straight into the scenario, right? So if I click this, it'll take me straight into this scenario so that I can start editing this scenario right away. So that's super handy, right? And then you can turn it on or off. This is just like the amount or the limit of how many calls you can have, but I've never hit that in my life before. And you can also delete it, right? So that's pretty cool. So that's kind of the webhooks. And then you have keys here as well. Keys are for HTTP requests, which are also very similar to webhooks. You're probably, unless you're a software engineer, never going to use this, right? But essentially, using an HTTP request, you can request information from a different website, right? So if I request information from a different website, then I can potentially request it, retrieve it, and use that in a workflow. But with keys, what happens is that sometimes with certain applications, you need to verify or authenticate yourself, right? It's like kind of logging into Google or Gmail, right? And it's like asking you for your password and your email. And that's exactly what one of these keys is you have to verify yourself. And this is pretty rare. I don't even use this myself. And you probably wouldn't use this yourself either unless you're into software engineering. And this is something that we're not going to cover in this module. And then devices, you're probably never going to use, just how many devices you have connected. Data stores, think about data stores as Google Sheets, right? Where it's just like a glorified way of storing data. Instead of storing it in like a Google Sheet like this, where you can have all the information about an object or a person or a thing or a place or whatever, you can just store it in make.com. I don't use this because I would rather just store that information in Google Sheets. It's free, it's easy to use, everyone uses it, it's easy to share, and for the vast majority of the time, I just use Google Sheets, right? So I personally, I don't even use this. And then more data structures is all about, it's all about JSON, right? So it's data structures, and JSON is just a way of formatting information. So if I just type in JSON here, you can kind of take a look and see what it looks like. JSON is, it's just a way of sharing information. If we take a look at images here, this is kind of what it looks like, right? So when you're talking about like software engineering and you're talking about sending data back and forth, this is the default language or the default file format that information is passed usually across the web in JSON. So when it receives this information, this is what you have to work with in make.com. Although this might be scary and unfamiliar, it's pretty simple to learn and to use. But ultimately speaking, it's not going to be this complicated when you go to use it. Here's a good picture of what it kind of looks like. You can be like, name equals Richard, age equals 33, hobbies equals biking, gaming, and squash. So it's just a way to format data, right, and present it in an easy to use fashion. So that's kind of data structures here, and why you'd need to create a data structure is because maybe you want to format data in a specific way so that you can leverage that data format to get the desired outcomes that you want. And we'll be covering this in a later module, but at a high level, this is something that you probably don't need to know at this point in time. Custom apps are custom apps that you create. It's not even worth going into that because you're at this point in time, it's just not worth covering that. But if you do want to create custom apps, you can go there. Resource Hub is if you want to find resources about how to use make.com or whatever. recommended use cases, all that kind of stuff, key learning concepts. I've never opened this up until I'm like, oh man, I should probably create a course on make.com, and this is like the first time. Admittedly, I opened up this tab. That's bad to say, but anyways. And then what's new is just like announcements. Once again, I maybe opened this up one time when I started make.com, and then I forgot it was there until right now. And then notifications, same kind of deal. If your workflows break or whatever, or they run into errors, it's going to be here, but you're also going to receive emails too. So you're probably not going to go to this page. So that's another page worth of just fluff pretty much. And then help, if you want to reach out to the community for help, or you want to look at help docs or whatever, contact support, you can go ahead and do that. And this is if you get stuck or you're in trouble, right? And then you have your profile here. So if you I'm going to circle back here now. If we go, you can sign out and you have an affiliate program and your profile, right? So this is more into the options side of things. You have organizations. Once again, we've already covered this earlier on, but you can see multiple different organizations. If you want to be part of multiple different teams, you can do so here and manage that here, right? And swap back and forth. Email preferences, you can change here. Time zones. So this is important in the sense that if you are debugging and you're trying to figure out why something may have gone wrong, you just want to make sure that the time zone that is set here is, you either know it's either on the same time zone that you're at, and if it's not at the same time zone, you know the calculation of time between, because when you're reading logs, you're gonna be like, this happened at 2 p.m., but it's 5 p.m. here, how did this happen? And you just need to make sure that you notice the difference between the time zone it's set in and the time zone that you are set in as well. So that's time zones. API, you can add an API account here, access here if you need it, but most of the time you're not sending an API token to something else, you're just having those API tokens in make.com. So you're using other API tokens, such as from Google Sheets or Gmail or Airtable or OpenAI or Google Drive. You're rarely doing the opposite way around. Two-factor authentication, you can enable that on your devices. And then affiliate program, if you do want to sell or if you do want to give a link and then make some money off of it, you can do that in make.com. And I'll just go over what that looks like here. So with the affiliate program, you just have your stats and your dashboard and all that kind of stuff. And you can see, registrations or all of that kind of stuff, right? Change it, customize your link, all that good stuff here. So that is affiliates, right? So now let's go into actually creating this particular workflow here, and into the main part of make.com, which is, how you can actually leverage this to automate your business and to make real money for yourself. So in the scenarios tab, what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on create a new scenario. And we are going to create a scenario where we automate the process of collecting leads, just like here. So at a high level, if you zoom out, there's 3 steps to it that we need to accomplish. Step number 1 is we need to collect that information on a form, right? Once we collect that information on a form, then we want to send that information, let's just say, into Google Sheets, and then we might want to email ourselves. I'm selecting purposely all Google products here because it's free to get started, right? I don't want to select something where you guys all of a sudden have to sign up or pay to use a software immediately out of the box. You can interchange this with whatever you want, right? You don't have to use Google Forms. You can use whatever form builder that you want. So when you come in here, the first thing you're going to see is this massive purple plus mark. Unless you're pretty much blind like me without my contacts in, you're probably not going to be able to miss it, right? So the first thing is you have to click there and create something called a trigger. So in any automated workflow, there's a trigger and there's actions, right? So you have triggers and actions. A trigger is a fancy way of saying start, right? So effectively, how do you start a workflow? And then actions, on the other hand, are what happens after the workflow's started. So for example, if we come back to our workflow here, the trigger is a form submission. So when a new lead inquires with your service, that is the trigger. And the actions are what happens afterwards. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to add that person into a Google form. We also, a Google Sheet. And we also want to send ourselves an email with that person so that we can pick up our phone and we can dial that person literally immediately, right? So that we can increase our conversion rate by 391% by calling within 1 minute. Okay, so what we can do is we can just type in form, right? And you can see that there's all different types of form softwares. There's HubSpot, CRM, they have forms in there, so you can use HubSpot. There's also Facebook lead ads. There's a form there, right? So maybe you're generating leads through Facebook forms and you want to use that as a form. Maybe you want to use Google Forms. Maybe you want to use Formula. I hope I pronounced that right. I don't actually know, but I've never seen that before. But FormSite, FormCam, WS Form, Formlets. Oh my God, the names just never end. Like the little puns on the end of form. There's just so many of them. Webflow, Typeform, FormStack. Anyways, you can just scroll down and there's just like so many different applications that you can have a form, right? And it's just almost endless, right? But for this case, we're going to use Google Form to collect information. And once you click into the form, now you're going to be faced with a lot of different options here. So when it comes to any integration like Google Form or like any of these other integrations here that we have, right? There's a lot of different options that we can do within that application. So we could search for a particular form, right? If we want to find a form, this is usually what's referred to as a two-step lookup, where you first need to find something out. You need to find an ID, and once you find that particular ID, then you can search for additional information on it. You can create a form. You can get a form. Get a form, retrieves an existing form by its ID. Update a form, move a form to trash. But what we want to do is we want to watch responses. So what that means is that it will trigger when a new response is received. So if we have a client or a lead that their name is Joe and Joe fills out the form, when that form is submitted, we're going to automatically receive that form here. So that is what we're going to do. And obviously there's a lot of other things here. Legacy means that it's depreciated. It's probably not going to be in existence for very long. So you just want to move off of these onto whatever it is. But they break them down into certain categories here. Response is typically like your trigger, right? But yeah, we'll just go ahead and choose watch for responses here. And it's going to ask us to create a connection to the form. So we need to go ahead and click the create a connection account, and we'll just name this Google form. Okay, sweet. And we'll sign in with Google, and then we'll have to authenticate. In this authentication step, what is going on here is that you need to verify to Google that you're the actual owner of the account, right? And once you verify to Google that you're the owner of the account, you're giving Make.com permission to use that Google form for whatever purpose that it needs to use that form for. In this instance, you're making sure that you're giving permission to Make.com to see, edit, create, and delete all of your Google Drive files. This gives it permission to wait for a response from that form. So we can go ahead and click allow, right? And we need to enter in a form ID. So now you're probably wondering, well, how the hell do I get a form ID, right? So this is actually a lot easier than you probably think. All we have to do is go over to Google Form, and we need to create a new form so that we can collect the information that we're looking for. And then once we collect that information we're looking for by somebody submitting a form, then it's going to be retrieved in Make.com. So let's build this out. So we're going to open up a new tab. We're going to go to forms.google.com, and we're going to create a new lead form. So we'll click on this massive plus button by Google to start a new form. And let's go ahead and create the most beautiful, I'm just kidding, we're not going to create a beautiful form here. It's going to look absolutely nasty, and there's going to be no customization here other than just the questions that we need. So the form is going to be titled, let's see, make.com crash course, okay? And we need certain information. So we need first name, it's going to be a short answer. We need last name, and we're going to put email input area here, and then we're going to put in phone input area here. The reason why I'm doing this way, like usually I just put email, but I think that it might block us from actually just collecting a phone number in Google Forms, which I don't know why, but I'm just using Google Forms just because it's a free alternative and anyone can follow along if they choose to do so, but you can use any form builder that you want to. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna select budget, and maybe we have like a drop down here, and option number 1 can be 0 to 1. Let's just say 0 to 1,000, 1,000 to 10,000, and then 10,000 plus. Okay, perfect. And then that looks good to me. So we've created the form, and let's go ahead and let's preview this form. So everything looks good. We have all of our questions here. And now that we've created this form, there should be this ID here. So if you go into the URL, it says docs.google.com/form/d/, and then here's the 20 or 30 digit ID here that you just double tap on and you copy it. And then we can come back here and enter in the form ID, and we can click search, and it should be, this should be titled make.com crash course, and we're gonna click OK. It's gonna search for it, and we're gonna click from now on, right? So from this very second moving forward, we're gonna receive responses from that form. We can go ahead and save this, and now that we have the form ID in here, and you can set a limit to however many you want, the maximum number of cycles of results to be worked with during one execution cycle. I'm just gonna leave it as the default limit of 2, and we can click this run once cycle. So essentially what we wanna do here is we wanna make sure that this form is working, right? This beautiful, sexy form that we just created. We wanna make sure that the information that somebody fills out on this form is automatically entered into make.com here, and we catch that information. So how do we do that? Well, we're just going to test this form by clicking run once, and essentially you can see here that it has run, but the output bundle is nothing, right? And that's because we've never submitted this form before in our lives. So we're gonna come in here and we're gonna enter in this information. So Jono, Catliff, Jono at test.com, and then it's gonna be 000, 000, 000, and the budget, it's gonna be, let's say, $1,000 to $10,000. We're gonna submit that, which the response has been recorded, and we'll come back in here and run once again. And now we can see that because we entered in that form ID, we have the response here. So if we kind of come in here, you can see under answers, we have first name, phone input area, last name, email input area, and budget. If we click into first name and then text answers and then 1, we can see the value is Jono, right? Which is what we entered, pretty cool. The phone input area, the text answers 1. There's so many clicking in here just to get the values that you're looking for. That's the downside of Google Forms, but we have the value for the phone number, and then we have the value as well for the last name here. So if we drill down, it's Catliff, and then so on and so forth, right? Text answers for the email input is also right here as well, which is Jono at test.com, and then finally the budget as well, right? So we have all of these values that we just selected here. Now what we want to do is we want to send this into a Google sheet, right? So we've now officially managed to set up a form. and we've collected that information, right? So we set up the trigger, something has started this workflow, and we have received information, and that information that we received is from a Google form. And we want to take that information that we just received, and we want to put that into a Google Sheet so that we can see all of the leads row by row in one specific location. So now let's build that out. So we're going to add another module here, and it should pretty much be the first one, which is Google Sheets. And once again, there's a lot of different things that we can do here, right? And almost like an overwhelming amount. For the majority of people watching this, calls, right? You know, you might not have to use this ever or other. You're probably not going to use that. The most common ones you're going to use are going to be the rows, right? So you're probably going to want to add a row or update a row. For the vast majority of times, these are the two things that you're going to use, or maybe search for a row, right? So maybe you want to find an existing row and then update that existing row. So you can do that. Or you can delete a row, clear a row, but that is the majority of what we're going to be doing here, right? And of course, it breaks it down once again at a sheet level, and then at a row level, and then at a call level and an other level. But for the majority of the time, we're using rows. And in this instance, we want to add a row for every time somebody inquires for our business with our business services. So we'll add a row. And it's going to ask us for a connection. Now, because we just shared or uploaded or shared that connection with make.com and Google Drive, it's automatically by default shared it with all of the Google products, including Google Sheets as well. So we can click continue here. The only problem is that it's limited in scope, right? So it hasn't given it full access to Google Sheets. It's only given it partial access to Google Sheets. So we have to update the scopes so that it provides it with full access over not only Google Forms, but also Google Sheets as well. So once we've signed in, we can click continue and allow access to not only see, edit, create, and delete all the files in the Google Drive, which we did before with the Google Forms, but now we want to see, edit, create, and delete all of your Google Sheets, spreadsheets as well. So we'll go ahead and click allow here. And we have officially given it permission, right? Which is pretty cool. However, with that being said, we still have to create a Google spreadsheet, right? Because right now that spreadsheet doesn't exist to insert the information into. So very similarly with the forms, we're going to go over to sheets.google.com and create a new sheet, okay? Same kind of deal. We can just call this make.com crash course. And we want to list out the information as headers on the sheet that we just received in this form, right? First name, last name, email, phone, budget, all of that kind of stuff. So we'll title this first name, last name, email, phone, and budget. And we'll also do date as well. And we have the header sorted out. We can kind of make that just a little bit more pretty. And there we go. Now what we need to do is integrate this sheet into make.com. So coming back to make.com, it's going to say search method. So we need to find the specific sheet that we're looking to update. So we'll search by path, and it gives a couple different options here, but usually what I'd like to do is just select from all, and it's going to say give us the spreadsheet ID, which very similarly with the Google form, we can do with the Google Sheet here. And in the URL, you can see docs.google.com/spreadsheets/D. I've been so curious what that D stands for, and I've never figured it out. So if you do know what it stands for, please leave it in the comments down below. I'm dying to know. And then here's the ID of that particular Google Sheet. We'll copy that and we'll paste it into here, and it's automatically going to load that spreadsheet up. Now, with the sheet name, there's only going to be one default standard right now, and that's because we have one particular spreadsheet, right? We don't have multiple. If you were to create multiple, you could select a different one. Okay, cool. And what we need to do now is we need to map the information. It's called mapping, which is just taking the values that we received from the form, right? So we received a form submission with the values, Jono being the first name, Catlif being the last name. That information was sent to make.com. And in make.com, we collected the submission. And now we need to make sure that in the Google Sheet, we put first name of the client next to the header first name, last name of the client next to the header last name, and so on and so forth. And this process is called mapping, which is taking the variables that exist and putting them in their corresponding location. So in the Google spreadsheet, we'll come in here and we're gonna click first name, right? And you can see there's first name here. But you don't necessarily just want to click that, because if you click first name here, it's going to enter in all of these things. It's going to enter in the question ID, the grade, the text answers. So that's not good. Instead, what we want to do is we want to drill down until we see the exact value of first name. So in first name, then we can go into text answers, and then value. And once we click value there, it's going to automatically load in this value for first name. And you can kind of see here, it says answers.firstname.textanswers.answers value, right? So it goes first name, text answers, value. So it goes all the way down to the location that you clicked on, and it enters that into the first name property there. Same kind of deal with last name. We want to duplicate this process, but just change it out so that instead of putting the first name in, we put in the last name. So we'll go down to the value section there, and then same thing for email and the rest of them as well. So we'll put in the value for email, the value for the phone, answers value, and then we'll put in the budget. Okay, text answers, and value for budget. Okay, perfect. We're gonna click OK, and we're gonna click save. Now we can try and run it again, but there's no new response that's been recorded, right? So we could go back and just fill this out a million times to keep running it every single time. What we could also do is we could right click on this trigger here and click choose where to start, and then choose manually, right? And now you can actually find the recorded form submissions and then choose one to start this workflow on. So we're gonna click OK because we just chose the previous one that we submitted, and we're gonna click run once. And now it's gonna run, and okay, it looks like nothing actually happened. That was way too dramatic and nothing happened. So I apologize for that. Okay, so we'll just go back to this form and we'll submit another response here. Jono@test.com, 0000000. Okay, and the budget is going to be 1,000 to 10,000. Okay, cool. And coming back here, we're gonna run once. And now you can see that it has run the scenario. And you can see it's run the scenario because it has this like little cloud-like thing at the top, right? Where you can click on and see the recorded values of that scenario run. So you can see first name equals, you know, same kind of deal here. Jono, right? And if you want to zoom out and get like, you don't want to have to click a million times to see the values, you can hit this download button here and click download output bundles. And now you can see it in JSON format, right? So kind of circling back to what I said earlier, when we have JSON format, that's just a way to format data in an easy way for computers to understand it, right? And if it's your first time looking at JSON data, it could be scary as well, but it doesn't have to be. You can actually just come in and look at there's key and value pairs with JSON data, right? And for example, what you probably want to do is, this is a bad example because for whatever reason, Google Forms doesn't actually give the key, which would be like first name here. It just says the ID of the first name, but you can see the value here. So the first value is Jono, the second value is the phone number, the third value is Catlif, my last name, and so on and so forth. So you can see it without having to drill down a million times. But usually speaking with JSON, Google Forms being a bad example of this, but usually it would be like first name equals Jono, right? last name equals Catlif. So it's pretty easy to wrap your head around and understand. Now that we've sent it over to Google Sheets, we can come here and see that the output is that it was updated, right? It was updated with the input values. First name is Jono, last name is Catlif, email is jono@test.com. So here we go. We have the values coming in here. Anytime you style, it's gonna copy. So I'm just gonna go back here. It will always copy the style of the line before it. So if you have the first data point coming in here after the header, it's going to automatically copy the header styling. So we can just set it back to default here. And we have first name, last name, email, phone number, budget. And we can also put the date in here as well. If you want to put the date, a very easy way to do that is in the date section. Let's just put right now. We can go into these functions, right? We can click the calendar here, and then we can click now. Once we click now, it's gonna automatically take a snapshot of the exact date right now down to the frickin' second, and it will publish that in the Google spreadsheet, right? So we've now done the second part of this, which is making sure that we've sent that information into Google Sheets, right? Now let's go ahead and create one more module here. And what we're gonna choose here is we're just gonna type in email, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and choose Gmail, right? But you could ultimately choose whatever email that you want. And I am going to send myself an email, right? So there's a lot of different actions you can take here. Copy an email, you can create a draft, you can delete an email, you can mark an email as read or unread, modify email labels, move an email, all of that kind of stuff. But for the purposes of this tutorial, what we want to do is send an email off, and we want to send that email off to ourselves. So we're going to create another connection here, and we're going to call this Jono's email. Okay, perfect. And sign in using Gmail. The only problem with this is that you cannot use a personal email in make.com. You have to use a business email. So what I'm gonna do instead is I'm gonna go ahead and just use a business email for the purpose of this tutorial. And we just have to verify that the account belongs to us. And once we go ahead and do so, we can now use this email to send emails straight through make.com, right? So in this instance, I'm just gonna send this email to myself. And I'm just gonna put the subject line as new lead. And for the sake of this, we need to use an emoji, so a bell emoji. I'm like addicted to seeing emojis when new leads come in. It's like 10 times more satisfying to know that you got a new lead when you get to see the bell emoji coming in here. So I'm sorry, but we're just taking 2 seconds to do this. Sweet, okay, cool. New lead, and then we can just put the content here, which is bell new lead, and then name, email, phone, and budget. Okay, sweet. And same kind of deal here. We're gonna type in value up top so we can see all of the values here, and we're just gonna map them appropriately. So the name is gonna be the first name with a space in the middle, and then the last name. The email is going to be the person's email, so we're gonna click value here. The phone is going to be the phone number down here, and the budget is going to be the budget down here. And that sounds great to me. When we send this email off, it's gonna automatically send all of this information. Just one thing about Google Gmail in this is that it does use HTML. In order for you to have a line break, you do need to have these line break HTML snippets in it. So every time you want a line break, you just put BR here. That's a bit unfortunate. Usually, I would have assumed that it wouldn't have needed that, but that's not the case. So we'll just put these BR snippets here, and it'll just be at the end of all these values, and then we are good to go. Okay, we're just gonna delete this one, and sweet. So that looks good to me. And we'll click OK. and save. And then we're going to run the scenario again by submitting this form one more time. So let's try this out again, Jono Catliff, and we'll do jcatliff@gmail.com and 0000000, and the budget is going to be $1,000 to $10,000. Okay, cool. So we have now submitted the form. We'll click run once, and it's going to send the email off. If we open up email here, we can take a look at and see that response coming in. Okay, sweet. So we have a new lead coming in here. New lead. Here's the name. Here's the email. Here's the phone number. Here's the budget. And that is really quickly how we can now send an email to ourselves. And the idea is, once again, that we jump on a phone call with that client literally within 60 seconds to close or sell that person pretty much immediately to increase our conversion rate. Now, just a couple other fundamentals here, guys, before we wrap up this tutorial. You can see the value here again, and it didn't copy over the styling from the line or the heading line above. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna talk about a couple more things here. So in make.com, you have a lot of other customization over these workflows because you can really do pretty much anything you want to with this. So one thing you could do is add a filter here. And in between every single module, there's like these 3 dots, right? Or I guess there could be more depending on how stretched out they are. But essentially, when you click this wrench, you can do multiple things. You can set up a filter, you can unlink it, right? So say you don't want this email anymore, or maybe you just want to not run it while you're testing it, you just want to test this Google Sheet, you can unlink it. We'll link it back together by grabbing this red thing and dragging it back in. What we can do is we'll click back on the wrench thing. You can add certain things, routers, modules. So if you want to add something in between there, you can click add a module, right? And then you can choose whatever it is that you want to add before the Gmail step, but after the Google Sheet step. We're going to go ahead and delete that, and we're going to click auto align. It's going to bring it back in. We'll hit the wrench one more time, and we can set up a filter, right? So let's say, for example, we're going to title this filter, and we want to make sure that we only have this pass if the budget that is set, the budget does not equal, and we'll do not equal to case sensitive. And I just want to see the lowest value. Let's just say it's 0 to 1,000. So let's say you have a lead coming in, you're like, look, these people, this lead is not gonna even be able to afford the lowest package that we have to offer. We just want to filter that person out. We don't even want to send an email to them. We're good, right? You can set up a filter, and if somebody fills in this 0 to 1,000 range, it will automatically stop at this step, right? It's not going to send out the email. So if we were to run this one more time, I'm just going to quickly enter this in, Jono Catliff, and enter in the budget here, which is 0 to 1,000, and click submit. And we're to run this one more time, it's going to stop at this filter, right? Because the answer was 0 to 1,000, it filtered it out, right? So if it will only pass, right, this filter if the answer they give for the budget does not equal 0 to 1,000. But if it's 0 to 1,000, then it'll stop this, right? And what we could do is we could take this one step further, where we could add a router here, right? And what a router does is it allows you to send the workflow down multiple different paths. So instead of just having one linear path like this, right, we could add another step here. And now it can go down 2 paths. With these paths, technically speaking, what will happen is when it hits this router step, it'll go down path 1, and then it'll go down path 2. What you typically want to do is set up some sort of filtering, so it either goes down path 1 or goes down path 2. So taking the same logic as before, what we could do is we could say, look, if the client wants to spend $1,000 to $10,000, we'll send it to sales rep A. If it is above $10,000, then we'll send it over to sales rep B. So we'll do $1,000 to $10,000 here, and we will select the budget one more time. The text answers, and the value is equal to, this time, 1,000 to 10,000. And then on this instance, we'll say this one is $10,000 plus, and we'll set the condition being if the budget here, text answers, value, is equal to, and I always like putting case sensitive just in case, like if there's a capital or not, it will still go through this module. I always like doing that, it's just habit for me. But this one is $10,000 plus, right? And we can click save, but right now nothing's happening here, right? We need to add another Gmail module. But instead of just typing in Gmail and duplicating it, what we can do is actually clone this, and then we can drag this close, and you can see it hooks on. And we still want to keep the filter, but we want to remove this. So we'll delete this module. And now this looks a bit ugly, so we can hit the auto align, and it's going to bring it back into shape here. And now, instead of being like, we're going to send it to, sales rep A, maybe you say, I want to send this to sales rep, 2@gmail.com, right? And we click OK here and save. And as long as the amount is for over $10,000, we'll send it to sales rep 2. Or if it's between $1,000 to $10,000, we'll send it to sales rep A. And if it's $0 to $1,000, we're just going to filter that out completely. So let's go ahead and let's test this one final time. We'll put in Jono Catliff and catliff@gmail.com and 000. And the budget is going to be $1,000 to $10,000. We'll click submit here, and we're going to run this scenario, and we can see that it's gone down this path, but it did not go down this path. So it was filtered out of 10,000, but it was not between 0 and 1,000, so it still got approved, and it got sent to sales rep A. So that is it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is gonna go over the very basics of Make.com and how you can set up a workflow, get data, how you can use that data to form actions and all of that kind of stuff. Now, in the next few videos we're gonna have in this crash course, we're gonna be going over more complicated systems, how you can build out real life examples of solutions that will either save you tons of time through automating it or make you tons of time by copying the workflow that I built and sending that off to a client of yours, right? So in the meantime, guys, make sure to subscribe to this channel if you liked content just like this. Hit the thumbs up button. Make sure to turn on the notifications. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks, and bye-bye.